All right. Hey, oh, it was so sweet. My husband is leaving his mom's and is coming home, and he's going to stop at the, I don't know, they have like an S&S seafood store or something like that, seafood market. And he asked me if I wanted anything, and he's like, do you want me to bring some lobster home or whatever? And I will eat lobster roll once in a while, but it requires mayonnaise for me and celery, and I don't want that now because I'm sliding back into my keto zone, and I do cycle a little bit. Like I'm not rigid because I'm not into that. I I want some I want some flexibility in my life for multiple reasons. And I said, I don't really want and I don't love lobster, but I'm like, I don't want lobster because I don't want mayonnaise. And I said, but you know what I would love? I'd love some halibut. And he goes, all right. He goes, I'll see what I can do. I'll get you some halibut if they have some. So I was like, oh, great. So anyway, I might be having halibut later. I'm super happy about that. So this brings me back to the menopause brain. Oh, ties right in, fits right in actually. DHA, omega 3s, okay? So let me think. Where did I end? Where did I end it? I ended it with the reproductive cycle, the soy, the Asian women that we've been lied to. Okay, women in Asia, historically and culturally, since the religion and agricultural shift, have been conditioned to put everybody first, not complain, tolerate anything and everything, and be quiet about it. Okay? So there is this keep it to yourself. So Asian women weren't going to complain about this. And if they did, it would be amongst themselves, but it would not be put out there. They're not going to go out there and complain about it. Okay? And who did all the research? Mostly men. Okay? Do you really think women are going to sit there and talk to them about their menstrual cycles? Fuck no. Asian women of all things. I mean, of all people. They're not things. They are not things. Of all people, okay? No, they're not going to, okay? But amongst the women, it was known. It was well known. Asian women suffered from menopause, and they suffered from menstrual difficulties as well, okay? So we have been lied to, absolutely lied to. Now, were they using Chinese remedies, and were they using soy, and were they using these things to mitigate it? If they had access to it, they probably were. Okay, but again, it doesn't correct. It doesn't fill the nutrient gap. But they can certainly be like a Band-Aid. Okay, they can certainly act like a Band-Aid. Now, as an herbalist, I hate to say that because I love herbalism, but I believe personally, herbalism should be used for acute situations to help get us through something very acute and very dangerous, or to support the body through something that is very difficult and our body is really struggling. But I do not believe it should be used as a Band-Aid, and I do not believe that people should turn to it in hopes of any kind of magic bullet, okay? Because plant chemicals, phytochemicals, plant toxins, okay? Yeah, there's antioxidants and things like that, but that gets into a whole nother, I don't want to talk about that right now. It's just a loaded gun, okay? They kind of do patchwork, okay? But they're not nutrients. Your body doesn't need them to survive. They don't build your body. They don't build your cells. They don't build your cell membranes, okay? They don't feed your mitochondria, okay? They don't do any of those things. They don't build your brain. They don't nourish your thyroid, okay? They act as patchwork or a Band-Aid. They can help you out when you're in a really rough spot, okay? But if you come to rely on them and your body is malnourished, you're still malnourished, okay? So we can leave this conversation right now because I think that makes the point, okay? So we've also been lied to about longevity. Their longevity crashed, okay? With the heavy plant-based diet. They started losing their teeth. You saw the Asian people get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter because of their predominantly rice diet. Okay. And this is all documented. Okay. So I'm not saying anything that's not documented. This is absolutely documented. Okay. It's just that the powers that be like to keep it from people and they make up their own fucking stories. Okay. So what you read when you Google initially is their own fucking stories. And they're not true. Okay. They're not true. There's an underground world where the truth is. And most of us don't access that underground world. We're living in the lie. We're living on the surface of the lie. Okay. So the menopause brain and even a young girl's body, okay, a young girl's body, in order to have a healthy reproductive system, you've got to have really beautiful hormonal balance. You've got to have a well-working thyroid. You've got to have great cellular communication. You've got to have ample nutrients in the body. You've got to have a lot of things lined up, okay? And if those things aren't lined up, you're going to end up with reproductive issues. PMS, period pain, endometriosis, on and on and on and on. Cysts and all sorts of things, okay? It's because your body is malnourished and also dealing with a toxic world with a lot of endocrine disruptors, a lot of things that are poison to your body. They disrupt your thyroid. Most women are iodine deficient. They're deficient in all sorts of nutrients, okay, that feed and nourish the thyroid, cholesterol being one of the main ones, okay? They don't have enough fat. They don't have enough fatty acids, enough fat-soluble vitamins. They don't have enough animal protein. And I say animal protein because of the specific completeness of animal protein. Plant proteins are not complete, okay? Your body has to scramble, and there's going to be days that you could be significantly low in certain essential amino acids that the human body needs. So when you eat animals, you're getting the completeness of it. Boom, here it is every single time you take a bite, okay? Not to mention heme iron versus non-heme iron. Our bodies run on heme iron, okay? We absorb far less non-heme iron, significantly less. So women are not getting enough iron. And again, it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And again, it doesn't matter what your blood levels are. So if you haven't read my posts on blood levels and why they're not an accurate diagnostic tool, unless they're looking for something specific like a toxin or kidney failure, or, liver enzymes might be through the roof, or, something like that. But for nutritional status, absolutely unreliable, okay? Completely unreliable. High, low, either way, unreliable, okay? Because it does not tell you what is in the cell. It doesn't tell you what your body has stored, and it doesn't tell you how your organs and your cells are operating, which is why people can get the blood test, go through all the battery of tests, you're healthy on paper. Nope, that means nothing. Zero, okay? We're clear on that, right? Means nothing. Are there some markers that can maybe make you go, my inflammation markers are really, really high, okay? Yeah, that can give you some information, okay? But nutrient status cannot be determined by a blood test. And it can't be determined by your hair either, okay? So people pushing that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, okay? The minerals in your hair are coming out of your blood, and I just said that what's in your blood is not an indicator of your health. Is not an indicator of your health, okay? Your hair also picks up minerals from water, hard water, shampoos, if they have, it's like a dandruff shampoo or something. We come into contact with minerals and it gets into your hair. And again, not an indicator, not an indicator, okay? Now, your blood has to maintain a balance at all times. And if it doesn't, you're dead. You're dead in like a really short period of time, okay? So your blood has to remain consistent or fairly consistent. There's not a lot of wiggle room. The minute your blood balance falls out of balance, okay, you're dead. So your body has a very narrow range of where the blood needs to be. These are nutrient ranges that we see, or that we're told exist, okay? The nutrient range. the nutrient range doesn't mean anything, okay? Because your body has to have this before everything else. So your body will pull nutrients from your bones, your cells, your thyroid, your organs, your tissues. It will pull nutrients to make sure your blood is balanced, okay? And if you have a flood of certain nutrients in your blood because you just ate something, it's in your blood. But it doesn't mean it's getting to your cells, okay? Doesn't mean it's getting where it needs to go. So I hope that myth is cleared up, okay? So imbalances are what cause disease, okay? Our bodies are no longer able to maintain homeostasis, which is the give and take balance of life and nature, right? It's like, it's this constant figure eight. Give some, take some, give some, take some, give some, take some, right? It's called symbiotic relationship. We are in symbiotic relationship with the environment, right? That's every form of life. Viruses, bacteria, parasites, fungi. We are in a symbiotic relationship. Give and take. Okay, give and take. It's only when that balance falls out of homeostasis that there's a problem. Okay? That should be like common knowledge, but people don't get it. And then you have the whole no virus people. Well, you might as well say there's no bacteria and there's no fungi and there's no mold on the planet too, okay? And no parasites, because they all are homeostatic regulators. All of them. They're all playing a different role for homeostatic balance on this planet. Okay, I'm going to try to do a video on the global virome and the human virome and ecology in kind of lay people's terms. I want to do a video on that, and I'll probably do one at some point, but it won't be today because I don't have enough time. So I am at 12 minutes, so I'm going to keep on the menopause thing for a moment and the reproductive thing for a moment, okay? So humans, our bodies thrive on ketones, and again, you're not going to get this in the mainstream world. You're going to have to dig, okay? And when we are in constant chronic glucose metabolism, okay, and we're not accessing ketones ever, okay, our body is actually not in the best shape it could be in, okay? And this can lead to a lot of problems, as can endocrine disruptors and all sorts of things, all sorts of insults to our body, okay? And endometriosis is very strongly correlated with thyroid malfunction later in life. So here we are talking about thyroid dysregulation. Your thyroid is not really dysregulated. It's doing the best it can under the environment that it's in the environment that it's in, and the nutrients that it has access to, and the hormone disruptors, and all of that. Okay, it's doing the best it can to keep you alive, but your body is struggling. Okay, you're having hormonal issues, you're having all sorts of problems, and hormonal issues are tied into mental instability, mental illness, and all sorts of things. On and on and on. Okay, and our reproductive system is highly sensitive to insulin. There's whole camps of researchers now and scientists that are actually calling hormonal problems basically forms of sort of kind of like diabetes or metabolic disease, right? Metabolic disease of these cells, because they are sensitive to the chronic insulin spikes, which comes with glucose metabolism. And even if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, okay, you're still having chronic elevated insulin. It might be, not as much spikes as some people, but it's still chronic. And you still have glucose chronically in your blood that your body has to get rid of immediately. It has to get rid of it. Otherwise, it causes cellular damage, okay? It's a backup system. It's not supposed to be our primary system. And I don't even want to say backup system, because I don't align entirely with the we are carnivores. We are hypercarnivores, okay? We are obligate hypercarnivores, and the other word for it is facultative omnivores, because we're not generalist omnivores. We don't share the same biology as a generalist omnivore. We are our own unique species. Go figure, right? Go figure. We are our own unique species. We have survived on this planet pre-agriculture on a meat-based diet where we were in ketosis most of the time. We had some plant foods to eat from time to time, okay, whether they be some roots or what have you, but there's not a lot of plant foods in nature because we're talking pre-agricultural revolution, before hybrids and genetic manipulation and all of that came around. There's not a lot. And a fruit out in nature would be extremely sour, bitter, okay? Not at all what we have access to today, okay? And then our ancestors knew that if they were going to have some plant foods, they had to cook them and pound them and grind them and right? So it wasn't the mainstay. And even though you have some people that are going to tell you, oh no, our ancestors were eating, plant-based diet, it's not true. It's not true. Our biology defies it, okay? Our biology is not about that, okay? And considering that other primates, despite the fact that they eat carbohydrates primarily, they do eat insects and bugs and stuff. So they're not 100% herbivore, okay? They are eating plants, bugs, worms, and things like that, insects and things of that nature. But they are predominantly plant-based, but they are in a state of ketosis because they have the machinery. So animals that eat plants predominantly are still in a state of ketosis because of their machinery and their biome, okay? Humans don't have that ability. We have to get our ketones by eating animals like a carnivore does, okay? So we are hypercarnivores, which means we are meant to sustain on meat and fat, but yet we can handle some plants as a survival strategy, okay? And again, kind of as a backup strategy or as an addition to, okay? But it's not the primary way that our system is designed to operate. And when you start getting into the physiology of how our body burns ketones versus glucose, it's a no-brainer. Okay? It is a no-brainer. This is the difference. Literally, this is the difference. Which would you choose? I want this. Okay? But we can do this for brief periods of time. We can do this, absolutely. And we can even have small amounts of carbohydrates, keeping us in like a mild ketosis where the carbohydrates are low enough to not trigger glucose metabolism. And that's what some people choose to do too. And some people choose to cycle a little bit. Like there's all different ways to do it. And humans would have absolutely cycled. Okay, so they would have been mostly ketosis in the wintertime, and then once the weather shifted and they had access to some plant things, they were including a little bit of plants, not enough to feed a whole tribe meals, okay, because you have to remember our tribes were not 30 and 40 people big. That's a lie too. That's a lie. That is a myth, okay? Again, it's been busted, okay? And there just weren't enough plant foods because most plants in the environment are toxic to humans. We are not herbivores. There's a lot of plant toxins in plants and even more plant toxins in wild foods, okay? And we just don't have the makeup to break them down well, which is why humans had to cook them and, try to make them less toxic, okay? But again, because it's a survival backup, it is not meant to be food. And the only reason people can eat a plant-based diet today is because they've been manipulated to not have quite as many toxins. Because from the archaeological evidence, when the agriculture shift first happened, they had massive die-outs of people. Okay, massive die-outs. The human health absolutely was decimated. Then we developed some adaptations. They were able to hybridize and manipulate and create these agricultural foods that became less toxic over time. Okay, but they still have toxins. They can't get rid of them completely. Okay, we know that broccoli and cabbage and those types of things are terrible because the chemicals literally displace the proper nutrients that your body needs into the thyroid and can cause all sorts of thyroid problems. They know this, like it's not even a debate. Okay, and the toxins in nature are actually much, much, much higher. And I always tell people, like, when I was a kid, our neighbor had, well, it's not really our direct neighbor, but it was in our neighborhood. They had an apple tree, and those apples were sour as hell. I mean, we used to eat them because, you get the, you get that, and kids love to do that, right? So we would eat them, but, they gave you a bellyache, and they made you not feel good. And so if we think our ancestors were, like, eating apples and shit, like, no, okay, didn't work that way. So again, you've got the lie narrative and they spin people to believe all this nonsense. But then when you get to the nitty gritty, you realize it's all a lie. It's all a lie. Try living on pine needles. Not going to happen. Okay? Yeah, would there be some wild blueberries in this summer? You know, we know that the Inuit even have access to some berries from time to time, but it is absolutely the minority of their diet. It is not the majority, okay? And it would be not all the time. You know, are they able to get some plant foods from time to time? Yes, they can, but it's not a ton. And even if you live in the tropics, it's a huge misconception that plant foods are available all year round. They're not. They're not. Okay? So we've been lied to. Agriculture made that happen. Okay? Agriculture. And the cultures that didn't have access to meat and only had agriculture prior to modern synthetic vitamins, they died out. You didn't learn that, did you? They died out. We are not herbivores, okay? So there's that. And the female body requires ketones to operate optimally. And it really rears its ugly head when a woman goes through menopause, if she hasn't already suffered reproductive problems, okay? But what I've discovered is that the majority of women that have a lot of menopause problems often had a lot of reproductive problems, okay? Painful periods, PMS, have a history of being on the birth control pill or suppressing it with Advil and all sorts of stuff, okay? So this is what I see, and this is what they're finding, okay? So there's serious hormonal imbalances to begin with, okay? And now, as you enter menopause, your body starts to shut down production of one particular type of estrogen. You are not estrogen deficient. Your body's actually making other forms of estrogen to keep your levels where they need to be, but you're losing the one that makes you fertile, okay? And as your body is reducing and getting rid of the one that keeps you fertile, okay, your body is switching over to a different operating system. You're going from operating system 1.1, you're getting an upgrade, a reboot to operating system 2.2. And if you don't have the right nutrients in your body, you are not going to be able to make that shift well. It is going to be horrible. As a matter of fact, unless you get your body some ketones, you are never going to shift into that operating system 2.0, okay? So as that estrogen, the fertile estrogen, starts to decrease, your body no longer can use the glucose in the same way. That's not just your brain, it's the rest of the cells in your body, okay? And it is hugely, it's not the only reason, it is hugely responsible for the absolute panic that the body goes through and the systems that start to break down and the symptoms that follow, okay? So the symptoms are a result of this estrogen leaving your body because your body doesn't want it or need it anymore. And anything that your body doesn't want or need is what? A toxin. It's a burden. The body doesn't want it, doesn't need it. Why is your body going to waste money? Precious resource, it's not money, it's energy, okay? Resources on something it doesn't want or need. It's not going to. It's not fertile anymore, so it goes away. Your body has other estrogen that starts to take over the show, okay? But the brain and the cells have a problem because there's no ketones there. There's no ketones to make this smooth transition into operating system 2.0. And your body doesn't have the fat soluble vitamins it needs. It doesn't have the cholesterol it needs. It doesn't have the fatty acids it needs. And it doesn't have some other nutrients like the DHA, because the conversion from the plant version to DHA is piss poor, okay? Omega-3 situation, piss poor, okay? So there's a lot of things going on, okay? And the omega-3 thing, I think there's other fatty acids that from ruminant meat and stuff that do similar things. I think it gets really nuanced and really complicated, and I haven't quite come to any solid conclusions about that myself yet, so I don't really want to talk about it. And again, I'm not putting myself out as an expert. I have a background in science, which I didn't learn any of this, okay? None of it. Didn't learn any of this in physiology, didn't learn any of this in my nutrition classes. I didn't learn any of this in my 6 years of college. And so this has just been stuff that I have had to do deep dives with on my own. So I'm trying to piece it all together because I know that the original narrative is a lie. And so it's just taken me a long time to really pull it all together. And I'm just trying to present it to you in a workable way that you can kind of work it out in your mind so that it makes sense. Okay. So your brain now has lost about 30% of its energy source because your cells basically are locking out about 30% of glucose. Okay. And if you exercise and walk all the time, like these are people that have active jobs, people who are on their feet all day, like nurses and landscapers and people that are always moving, your body is producing some lactate, and your brain can use some lactate as energy, so it can help fill the gap a little bit. Not nearly the same as ketones though, okay? Because if you don't have ketones, where the brain is going to just take those ketones and your brain is going to start thriving. Your hormones are going to start being more balanced. Your thyroid is going to start working better. But you also need the nutrients, which is why sucking down ketones is not the way to go, because you're not getting the nutrients and the cholesterol and the fat soluble nutrients and the DHA and the fatty acids that your body needs. Okay? You're not getting them. So the whole ketone, sucking down of ketones is a bullet fix. It's not correcting anything. You might feel a little bit better, you might, have some good benefit, but the underlying train wreck is still there. You're just putting a blanket over it and hanging some flowers and pretending that it's not there. So let's not do that. Okay, let's not do that. So the human brain requires ketones to absolutely thrive, unless you're someone who won the genetic lottery. And if you won the genetic lottery, it means every backup system that you have is working really good. Your spare tires are really damn good. You got some really good spare tires, and you can go forever on those spare tires, okay? But most cars can't go forever on spare tires. But you just happen to hit the lottery. And I think it's about 1 in 14 people right now. So about 1 in 14 people do not have metabolic disease at this time. It's not many. It's not many, okay? We're a mess because the system is designed to keep us a mess. And if you continue to believe the narrative, you're likely to stay a mess. Now, there's people that say they went vegan and they feel great and it healed all their problems and whatever. Again, phytochemicals. Phytochemicals. They can put the pretty blanket over the train wreck and hang some flowers. Okay, they can do that. But the studies aren't looking good with vegans. They're not. And again, the mainstream narrative leads you to believe one thing, but they've got brain scans, they've got biopsies, they've got what's happening to their genes and epigenetic situations going on with vegans, long-term vegans. It's not looking good. So if you can survive long-term on a vegan, you are the exception, not the rule, okay? And this is where we're at. And you can't live without B12. You have to take supplements. And a lot of vegans are taking supplements. They're taking all sorts of supplements because you cannot survive as a vegan. Remember I talked about agriculture when they didn't have meat? People were dying out, okay? So there it is. And there's other reasons too. We covered a lot. But I want to continue this conversation, and I will in another video at some point. But I think I'm going to sign out for now. All right? Signing out.